All right. What's up, gentlemen? Welcome back to the show that has no name. And yeah, I guess first of all, how was your guys' Christmas? How you guys feeling? Rock.
Yeah, it was great.
Great. Did anybody give any of their family or friends any Bitcoin or inscriptions?
Did they what? Did they gift any?
Yeah, you guys do any actual gifting of Bitcoin or inscriptions?
No, but it doesn't mean it won't happen. It just
Yeah.
won't happen on the holiday. See, I don't want to like taint holidays with possible crypto stuff. I think I've done enough of that. So I'm just going to sneak it in like in a couple of weeks. Maybe.
And I think even if I did, I might just escrow it myself forever so that they don't have to worry about private key management. So, yeah.
I saw a friend
Yeah,
of mine on Twitter who borrowed a few grand from her dad and then returned it tenfold as assets on a ledger, which was a pretty cool idea, you know?
Shout out Witters. That was a crazy move. You know, we've got to make sure those stories get lifted loud and proud because Lord knows there's plenty of the opposite ones. So
Yeah,
shout out
you're like,
Witters.
Dad, buy this for 30 grand, and then it turns into 3 9 months later instead of going the opposite direction. Yeah, she did it right, man. And he was like, that was a really pure moment where you saw him like just totally in disbelief, but he wasn't like anti the sentiment. He just couldn't believe that something had gone like so severely right, and she was just giving it back to him. It was really beautiful. Cool thing to post.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I watched that video, but I had the sound off, so I was just like watching his body language,
Oh,
and I couldn't
sounds
quite
important.
tell if like he was like, "What the heck is this squiggly drawing that you printed out for me?" Like that's what I could kind of grok, but I wasn't sure.
He just kept going, no, you got to be kidding me. It's really pure.
Shout out the
Yeah,
dads
that's
of the world who just roll with it. They don't understand it. They try to be nice, but you know, you just show them the numbers bigger than it was before. That's all they care about.
Yeah, I have heard the tactic too. If you're gonna gift Bitcoin, you give them like the seed phrase, like for sure have a backup that you secure more properly. Because when they mess it up, you can be like, "It's okay, I love you, I got you, I knew you were gonna do this. Here's your 12 words again."
I
pieces of metal.
actually love to recommend a 2 of free multi-sig, and I have done this a few times with Unchained Capital. They have a free multi-sig solution you can set up where they can act as an optional third-party signer. So you can hand someone their key. You can like give them like a Trezor, Ledger, or any signing device. Set them up with that on Christmas morning. Put some Bitcoin in there, and you can have that other multi-sig. You can have that other key, and so you know you plan on working together. But if you die or you have a falling out, I'm just, worst case scenario, they can go to the third party signer. So I generally recommend that as like
Bitcoin?
if you're trying to set up less familiar people with it, all they need is just that one signing device.
It's a Bitcoin multisig.
So
What's the company again?
well, there's a lot of them. This is one that I've used personally and known for a while. They're called Unchained Capital. They're like an OG, pretty hardcore Bitcoin company. But there's a lot of them out there. That just happens to be one I'm most familiar with.
Yeah, I think they're one of the bigger ones that do like the institutional side of multi-sig stuff. But yeah, I think that's cool, especially because they could be like, "Hey, I'm in El Salvador trying to buy a Happy Meal. Can you like sign off on this other side of the transaction?" You're like, "Yep, I got you, no problem."
Yep.
Yeah, okay, very cool.
Just the Happy Meal would cost you how much today, do you think?
Yeah, I know.
I don't mean in
More
Bitcoin.
fees.
Well,
More
it's
fees
not-
than the big bag.
like-
The fees are three
I'm
big
sorry,
bags.
man. Hate to break it to you, but there's a guy named Bob who's inscribing way too much right now.
It's like buying a box of paper clips and then paying 10 boxes of paper clips to get it to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We should price things in the Costco hot dog. So the fees are 10 hot dogs, and the hot dog is one hot dog, and it's you can't afford a hot dog.
You have to have a relatable metric, otherwise none of it makes any sense. We were talking to Zero the other day, and she said that she has taken enough airplane rides to measure radiation.
We'll never
in
know.
bananas. You know, you can measure radiation in bananas because
Like
bananas.
Or I can just go ask her.
It's crazy. It's crazy because Sai was helping to explain it from like the side of the microphone or something.
Wait, Donnie,
Apparently, yeah.
you just cut out for like 10 seconds. All we heard was she was about to say something, and then
For real?
you cut out.
Oh, dude, is
Yeah.
that should I tether my back now though? Okay, what
You're
she
like
said
really
is
good, and then it cuts off.
Oh crap! All right, I'll try to go on Tether in a minute and see if that works. But let's see if this works for now. She said you can measure radiation in bananas because bananas contain a specific, like micron weird particle, a number of radiation each. But you can measure I know 50 bananas, so you can say the airplane gives you 50 bananas worth of radiation when you take a cross-continental flight. Interesting concept. Measurable ideas.
That's a sci-forism right there. Let me tell you.
That's amazing.
Ha!
I like to confirm.
How many bananas till it starts getting dangerous? Are we talking like thousands of
I can look it up
bananas?
while we're talking though.
10,000 bananas? Like if I jump into the banana, the big crate of bananas at the grocery store, am I gonna have significant radiation?
It's more digesting, not covering yourself in the bananas. Just I'm looking it up right now.
Are you guys tweet scripting at all? This is like the new craziness right now. Are you guys tweet scripters?
Oh my!
I sent 5 just to see how annoying it would be, and then I was like, I wonder if anyone's
You gotta like make a burner account and just like mass spam your burner. That's the way to get like the.
Yeah, I should have done it from the reforms, right? Yeah, that would have been a good idea.
Yeah,
So,
I enjoy it. I love it. It's pretty lighthearted to me. It just takes all of the goofiness that was happening on chain, obfuscated from the user, and just shoves it in people's faces so they have to see it. They have to look at it, stare into this insanity you all have created. This is what it looks like. So, at least I love that it brings it forefront and center.
Twitter doesn't have smart contracts, and BRCs and inscription based tracking systems for shitcoins is just an above ground tracking method for something that doesn't have smart contracts. So it's like, it's not absurd. It's just why? And I got to stop asking why, because everybody else says why not. And yeah, why not?
Yeah,
I can't tell.
I posted about this earlier today, and from like a technology perspective, there's no reason whatsoever to do something like this. You don't have any of the benefits of blockchain, smart contracts, data availability. It's just you lose it all. The benefits, though, and I didn't really want to highlight the benefits publicly, but throwing inscriptions on Twitter is way better than throwing them on Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin, you get explorer potential, or like people are always looking at explorers, and you can see them there. On Twitter, it's like algo farming. This is exactly what the algorithm wants. You have the deployer that's basically engagement farming everyone. Hey, here's a new token, make this post go viral. And then, it has like 1 million views or something. Everyone's replying to it, and replies get, extra weight to your original post. So it's like maximum engagement. So now everyone sees it, and it's just all over the timeline. And, Twitter is where we hang out. Like we're all just sitting there on our timelines, just seeing all these new tokens. And like, who doesn't want to just, it's free. Just throw a little bit on there. Twitter, it's not impossible to create fake accounts, but it's not like the easiest thing in the world either. So there is some bot protection maybe. And Twitter obviously has redundancies to their data. And so you could argue that it's a good place to store it, even though it's not decentralized or like open or permissionless. Like it's just a giant centralized entity that's controlling this. So it's just the epitome of hype and speculation.
I loved your take on it, Bob, and it allowed me to kind of jump in and pretend to do little devil's advocacy. Because one of my things is that we're using Bitcoin as this messaging service, or blockchains from a pricing standpoint don't really make sense as a messaging like backend for a fungible token standard. But so it would make more sense for there to be some, if we're going to actually do this type of thing to try to create a fungible token, we would make more sense to have something which is more designed to be a messaging platform. And I was trying to say this is a little bit in some capacity closer to what I think might actually make sense, because we've talked about this in various places, but at some point the pricing mechanism of Bitcoin's block space, compared to the number of bytes that it will take to represent and message, a token operation on chain, will will have imbalance, and it will eventually be too expensive from a byte standpoint or there'll be like a minimum amount of like tokens you have to send with an operation in order for that operation on Bitcoin to be economical.
Yep.
So it prices out the long-term use case of these, which is okay. It's kind of interesting. That's a thought I'll throw out there.
But I mean, jumping from Bitcoin to Twitter, like that's just too far. Like Celestia was built for this. Like Celestia is the inscription token blockchain essentially because it's a data availability layer. Like in the modularity thesis for scaling blockchain, Celestia just sits there and just stores your data. It makes sure that it's in the right order, orders it, and stores it, and that's it. And that's like all you really need for an inscription token. And so I get going from Bitcoin to something like Celestia, but going from Bitcoin straight to Twitter, it's like, I don't know.
This is what humans do, though.
Good point about Celestia. Like that is what it's a data availability. It helps like the sequencing and timestamping of it. And Bitcoin I use the term data availability for Bitcoin often, not because I think it is true all expansive data availability. It's like this very it's this very kind of like concentrated type of data, and Celestia purports to be much more expansive. So that's a very fascinating point you make.
And that's what you're supposed to use the things that are designed for the thing to do the thing, but people tend to like to do exactly the opposite. Like, have you ever seen a donk car? Or you take like an old car from the 80s that's a boat, like a Caprice Classic or something, and put 30-inch wheels on it and make it like as high as a SUV. Like you just buy an SUV and that would do that way better, but it's not cool the way it is when you do it the wrong way. So I think it's been like, for example, IPAs. IPAs were made more bitter than normal in order to preserve longer for long voyages on seas or across vast expanses of land or something like that. So people made IPAs for that. And then like hundreds of years later, we picked them up as Americans in the 2000s and we're like, I wonder if we can make them totally undrinkable and get you hammered faster than you think they will. Like the Dogfish Head 120, there was like 25% alcohol. It's basically like shochu at that point. It's not even beer. But we like to do this thing where we're like, I know this is not the point of this item, but what if we did this with the wrong thing? Like the humans, I think, and I don't mean to devalue that because I think we find a lot of things we wouldn't have found if we were involved in pointed problem solving by doing this shit that doesn't seem like it matters and doesn't make any sense. Because maybe we'll figure something out about Twitter by trying to launch shitcoins on it, find out something about it.
Okay. Really quick, let's take this to the extreme. Let's say that Twitter was made for inscription tokens. Like that is the use case for Twitter. Twitter is going to devolve or, upgrade itself into the ideal inscription platform. Let's just take this all the way to the end. Let's say the end game is Elon loves inscription tokens and builds tooling for it. And okay, now let's, what does it look like in that version of the future? Let's just assume that it, humans use it for inscription tokens. It's exactly what everyone wants. What does the future hold here?
You find out later that it's all stored on Dogecoin on every node. And it's actually the world's most duplicated database. And it is the only shitcoin that survives.
Well, the disrespecters might actually gain some traction because instead of having to actually, run their own core config, they can just go over to that mute button and mute like 5 different strings. So they might actually be able to get something done.
Yeah, I think the funny thing too is like we didn't go from Bitcoin to Twitter. We went from like Bitcoin to every other chain breaking because they're trying to copy inscriptions. They have fungible tokens, which is super like left curve as hell. And then now we're on Twitter, and then we got like the postage mail jokes, and we're going to go to carrier pigeon, and then horse-drawn carriage, and then we're just going to have to like etch them and carry them and like place them in people, and that would be the deploy.
But I kind of love it because, so like, One of the really good compelling arguments for this type of fungible token standard is that it's just so easy for people to understand what's happening by looking at the actual text. Now, the actual mechanics of how the balances are recorded, I think still evades many, in fact, most.
Yes.
But the actual, like, somebody could look at it and they understand what's happening. Whereas very few people are able to audit smart contracts on other blockchains themselves. And most people have to trust other people. So there's a lot to be said for it being broadly accessible. And I think that's one of the reasons why it took off. I think a lot of people then assume that my technical criticisms of it are then also a condemnation of it. And I only condemn it a little bit. I own a lot of these assets, but I don't talk about which specific ones when I can. But then also people think that I'm saying that they won't go up in value. No, guys, I've been here a decade. I know how this shit works. It's going to go up, and there's nothing I can do about it. I can just be the guy who says, I said it wasn't going to work 5 years from now. So I'm just kind of seeding those ideas, those concepts, so I can like have a gotcha in 2020.
You still ride the wave, though. You're allowed to know that it doesn't matter what matters or what works for the next.
What do I miss? What do I do, Charlie? Give us the output.
No, I think there's something to be said. There's something to be said, and you know, this is the Bitcoiner take, but I think they go a little bit too short. They say, "Oh, well, all this fiat is meaningless. It's whatever," and they say fiat culture, and I say, you're pointing to this nihilism which exists, and then you're stopping there, because if you go further, and they say, look at all the speculation that happens in markets, and we're like, yeah, the most speculation is on the app. This is the actual tip of the spear of speculation here. In shitcoin land, and we embrace the nihilism underneath all of this, and it actually kind of turns it into this kind of like wag me positivism. And I think that's pretty, I like, at least, you know, that's what keeps me sane if I'm looking at this, instead of trying to like claw back and say, no, don't do this, you're gonna, you know, a lot of you are gonna lose money. I think it rather lets me say, this is inevitable. I can enjoy the insanity here, and I also, with proper risk management, can participate in profits. So that's been my kind of attitude this whole year. And I think you have to embrace this going in the next 2 years, because it's just going to get wilder.
I've been trying to do the why not thing instead of the why thing. I'm inclined to try to logic through everything. Is there a purpose for this? And usually when there's a purpose for it, it's not the thing that I should have done if I were in the mood for being on some train that's already leaving the station. It's going to happen without me. I may as well just feel like, why not? Let's try to have fun with this, you know? Like BRC 100. What's a BRC 100? I don't even know.
If you're going to leave fiat, you want to have a pretty compelling reason to do that. So, like, that's why you get a lot of people who don't just go for the, like, 2 or 3x on Bitcoin. They're going for the 100x on, you know, Shiba Inu or whatever, or, like, Elon pumping Doge. So I think the hope is that through that, you know, you take your lumps and you end up somewhere a little more sane, still grokking the, like, exiting fiat philosophy. And I think through that, the reason that I think being human readable is probably a factor, but I think the progress bar is like the thing. It's the fact that it's fair mint, and so we can just be like, watch me get rich. Like, I'm on the train now, and it's everything you see. This one's minted out. Okay, am I too early? Already, it's moon. That one's gone. Let's go to the one that's 72% of the way there to me being, you know, generational wealth, and that's like the main driver. I think that people are like aping into.
Yeah. If you think about it like a video game, it actually makes a lot of sense. Because it's not like you can just figure it out by just glancing at it. You have to like, oh, this looks like code. I have to kind of decipher it. Okay, I figured out the different components. Here's how it works. Okay, where do I do this? Oh, I do this in this place. Okay, what wallet do I use, or what tech do I use? Oh, I have to use these different tokens. Okay, and you like figure it out. And so it's like you're mastering levels in a game. And then you finally get there and you actually get some token, and it's like that feedback loop, like, oh, I'm winning. You know, like I'm getting into this token, and maybe some of them win and maybe some of them don't win. But I think there's this game-like feature to inscription tokens that is irresistible, perhaps. Like, who doesn't want a nice, fun way to spend their time degenning in crypto? Like, that's what everybody wants. And so, yeah, there's probably something there.
It's a great way to. I was talking about this with I think Owl and Beezy back in May, because I was again trying to play devil's advocate for the ERC20 at the time, and I was like, well, I could see this being very much like the meme coin driven frenzy, and it certainly seems like that prediction has come true. But I think meme coins are very fun to watch, because I think last cycle there was still a lot of people who I would say probably truly believed in a lot of these, and maybe I'm divorced from it, but it feels to me that there's a little bit of market maturity in that most people understand that these are speculation, and it's more a betting on mimetic trajectory rather than specifically that Ordi will be the something or other, but rather Ordi is very much like Doge in that it's broadly popular. And then a handful of people do think it's like the gas token of ordinals, but those people are over here, and then the rest of us are like, well, it's like the core blue chip asset within this mimetic class of coins here. So yeah,
shows you who the clientele is at the moment, at very least, because it's not like everybody has a dog, right? Not everybody is, you know what I mean? Like most people have dogs.
Oh, Donnie, you cut out again.
Not everybody has ordinals. Oh, sorry. Most people have dogs, is what I'm saying. No, am I still?
You're back now.
You're back.
No, sheesh.
You're back.
It's just there's no winning. Why does the internet do that? It's like stable home internet. It's supposed to do the thing.
It's not the internet. You were just dropping so much of a bomb that the computer couldn't handle it.
Boom! It's the bandwidth problem. Well, anyway, everybody has a dog. Doge is a pretty easy sell. Who's buying all this Ordi? Nobody has an Ordi or an ordinal. Not nobody, but like the very few people do. And most certainly, most people don't know what it is. So who's buying all this Ordi?
I've got a shitcoin group here in my hometown, and we've been doing this for years together. And we have an evolving thesis. And right now, there is a sequence, an animal sequence that goes, and it goes dog, frog. It goes dog, frog. I have to look this up. What's the next animal? Something cat. Cat's the last animal to pump, and it's always the most minuscule pump. But
some people hate cats.
There's like a whole animal sequence.
Yeah.
Is dog the biggest, typically?
Dog is always the biggest. Okay, it goes dog, frogs, monkeys, cats. That's the rotation. That's your like nightmare blunt rotation for meme coins.
Makes sense. I mean, there's a current new dog meme coin going crazy on stacks, so the theory holds.
Yeah.
The dog with a hat thing, or no, that's a different dog token, right?
Maybe? I think it does. It's like Welsh. It's like a little corgi dog. Which that probably is like a different meta. Like, what type of breed is the dog? How big is the pump? But that's really in the weeds.
I gotta stop asking why. Why not?
Yeah,
why not? Make another one. Make one for every dog. Make two for every dog.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think we've talked about meme coins a lot.
Clearly, you know how to toe the middle very well, Charlie. So props to you.
Do you want a banana update? I have a banana update.
Drop it.
The reason that we use bananas as a metric for measuring radioactivity is because each banana has, this is actually a real thing. It's called the banana equivalent dose, the BED. It has its own initialism. Bananas contain or produce approximately 98.2 nanosieverts of power, and each has 3,520 picocuries per kilo of bananas. Sorry, and radiation. What is 3,520 picocuries? I don't know, but it's a banana, or it's a kilo of bananas. So you can say X number of bananas to measure radiation, and it's actually an official measurement system, the banana equivalent dose. Just wanted to put a cap on that.
Impressive.
A hat on it, you mean? A banana with
appeal. I want to put appeal on that. It's an appealing concept.
Do we want to pivot to talking about spam in general? Kind of a food reference, but kind of a blockchain reference? Or we could talk about runes, which there was some runes alpha. I like them both. I need preference on which one should go first. Let's talk about spam.
Just to finish just to tie the knot, after we put on the hat on the banana conversation. If you eat 10 million bananas at once, then you will get radioactive poisoning. So if you are ever presented with the opportunity to consume 10 million bananas simultaneously,
if we're
probably
doing this,
don't do it.
400 bananas a day will build up enough potassium that your heart would stop beating. So well before the radiation limit, you're overloading on potassium.
All right. We can
get
get back
to
to
spam
now.
Let's talk about spam. Yeah.
Let's talk about spam. Not Masubi, but blockchain spam. People farting and pooping in our swimming pools. What do you guys think?
Well, obviously the Bitcoin maxis have done their fair share of eschatological studies and commentary on this. I think this is back to the age-old question. Well, who's cited in the white paper? Adam Back's proof of work and Hashcash. Like, the Bitcoin has natural spam prevention mechanisms built in. One of my first public tweets on the issue back in January, after I was kind of dipping my toe in scribing, was just 2 lines saying that long term, I think Bitcoin's natural block space pricing will price out frivolity, and I think we'll see that. It's going to take a while. I'm not too worried about spam. Spam is very much, it's like that senator said about pornography in the 90s. You know it when you see it. Like, it's, the definition of spam is pretty much invalidated by the fact that people are paying substantial amounts of money to put these things on Bitcoin. So I just think, I don't see how you argue that it's spam. You can argue that it's frivolous activity. There's a big difference between these two things.
Can always argue that. Anything, it said every protagonist is someone else's antagonist, no matter what. It's a matter of perspective. And I think that filter is always in place, because if people are paying to put something on the blockchain at the current rate, then they deem it worthy, right? And it's not really up to other people to even judge that, especially in the case of Bitcoin.
And I think
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Okay. While there's money to be made, people will will use the blockchain to make money. And so if there are assets to be minted to make them money, if there are tokens to be minted to make them money, we've been kind of in, I don't know, some people call it a bull, some people call it approaching a bull, some people call it a mini bull run. But there's definitely, we've seen meme coin round 2 in 2023. I didn't really expect 2023 to be the year of the meme coin, but we had a huge spike in meme coins earlier in 2023, and we're having another one now. And it's not just on Bitcoin, and it's not just inscription tokens either. We've seen activity across chains on meme coins. And so when you get a meme coin season where there's lots of money to be potentially made, then you get people that are willing to pay to transact on Bitcoin in order to participate, because they can make money. It is a profitable exercise for them. So, take out meme coin season and you lose all of BRC20 almost, which is like over 50%, maybe over 60, maybe over 70, maybe over 80 of all inscriptions. And then you don't have as many inscriptions. And then, I don't know. I think it's a different conversation about spam when you subtract out meme coin season. So I think that's, I'm interested to see what happens in the event that we ever, see a time when it's not meme coin season again.
Yeah, first of all, I'm like the plebeiest of plebs on this topic. I'm like just learning now, but I'm pretty mixed. I buy the arguments that, like Luke's tweet yesterday about like, how can you say this is a DDoS attack if they're paying their internet bills? First of all, funny as hell, but like it holds some water. And like, likewise, if someone could pay Google to get to the top of my inbox and it was just junk, that doesn't make it not spam. There's like a subjective point there. So like the fee being the law seems it's not misguided, it's just incomplete in my mind. And so if I look at I don't think ordinals are spam, but there's a question here about when do we not defer to fee rate, which is like a consensus authority, to we have to intervene in the system to make sure it's operating as intended. And I don't think now is the time, because this is not spam in my mind, but I think there could be a case where that is, and deferring to fee rate is kind of like the same argument of the free market will handle all. There's no market failures, and I think that's probably not the case. So there's like a dance there about when we intervene. It's largely a moral question, I think, but I do think it's something we have to think about. So I think one underlying question is important.
I'm going to roll back a little what I said earlier, because you guys both kind of talk about how it is a little bit of subjective definition, because spam is usually defined as unwanted or unsolicited messages in large amounts. And by that definition, if you have a node and you're getting all these transactions broadcast to you and you don't want them, you would consider that spam. I don't really think that this is the right heuristic to talk about how we understand block space. Block space is a neutral layer which it has a pricing mechanism to it, which allows us to come to consensus around what should be in there and how the block space ticks forwards. So, I don't even really think block space has I wouldn't even define it as a spam prevention mechanism. It's more like just a mechanism to prevent attacks and to accrue value. And that is really what it is. And so we can agree that there is spam going on Bitcoin, but that's just your definition of spam. The Bitcoin network's neutral as to whether it is spam or not. It's simply a valid transaction. So
Bitcoin's a point of this is probably a nuanced point that I want to poke on, because I agree with you that at the node level, it's not. People are saying it's filtering. It's not censorship, it's filtering. And I agree with that. That seems to hold to me. You have access to the data and you choose to moderate it a certain way according to how you want to run your node policy. And then if you're a miner and you use that block template, that gets pushed to the chain. I do think there's some kind of blend there where it's the node can filter, but then the chain can censor, if that makes sense. There's some kind of dance there where the definitions flip almost from you running your node to what the global kind of user base can put on chain, depending on what the majority of hash rate or all hash rate determines. And this is where kind of consent, like you described last time, of consensus rules versus standardness rules, etc. There's kind of a dance there between filtering what hits the chain as a block and these kind of ideas of consensus versus standard, etc., if that makes any sense.
Participants are able to participate in the way that they want to participate, but it doesn't mean that the system is going to change long-term or short-term based on that participants' change or their ability to filter something. Because you can do whatever you want on your node, but as long as other nodes are doing something else, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. So the way that I see it is that it's an algorithmic facilitator, not an arbiter of justice. It's not deciding what's right and wrong. It's just there's a line of things that are paying fees, and the highest fee gets to the front of the line, and we're going to take 10 people this time, top 10 people, you guys come on in. That's, for the most part, that's just what it's doing. And I think it's important that we finally have something, and I've never seen anything like this in any part of history that I've studied, not that I've been alive for that long or even studied that much, but I've never seen something that was focused on equity, not equality. It's not trying to level the amount of money in everybody's pockets. It's trying to level everybody's opportunity to spend whatever money they have in the same way as anybody else would spend it. So there is still going to be a difference between me and Bob's books, but we both have the same opportunity to do the same thing if we have the same amount of money, which is up to us entirely. And actually no other party can control how the money becomes diluted either. It is not the best system if you have a specific way you think it should work. It's the best system if you think something ought to just behave the same way all the time, regardless of who's talking about it. And I think that when we talk about what Bitcoin should be, I think the word should maybe doesn't belong there. Bitcoin ought to be what it is as the arbiter, or not the arbiter, but the facilitator. In my mind, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I was trying to think, how would we all feel if there was some group, very, very wealthy group of people that decided that they hated BRC20s and ordinals and financial transactions on Bitcoin, and they just wanted to take all the block space for the next year. They had $1 billion set aside, and they just inscribed these 400 kilobyte or just under 400 kilobyte blocks of nothingness. Maybe it's even just spam over and over and over and over and over and over and over again in their messages. And they played up to
2017, by the way. This happened already.
But they didn't last.
Like,
and what happened, right?
A thousand, like 1,000 sats per VB or something like that. That essentially prices out most transactions. It's just going to get really, really expensive to transact on Bitcoin at 1,000 sats per VB. So if something like that happened, colossal waste of money, but like no one can do anything on Bitcoin anymore. But even to like transfer.
But you're mad that
I'm
bugged. So you bug it. First of all, you bug a system because it's bugged. Now it's just still bugged, and you've won nothing in that. Also, if you take over Bitcoin yourself, it's valueless because it's no longer Bitcoin. But those two things, I think, are self-solving problems.
I know. So this might not ever happen, but in the event that it did, like, would we do anything? Would we care to do something about this?
This is a good thought exercise, Bob. That's a really good that's a good thought exercise, Bob. I like that because I'm trying to imagine this. I would not like it. I would not be happy. I would be just as pissed as Luke is. And I would probably try to configure my node's relay to not relay those. Here's a scenario which I think I would probably add this personality to the scenario, though. In possession of, effectively, the keys to very core parts of the dominant client, and therefore the dominant mechanism of relaying all the transactions, and also doing that. I would probably have a little bit of a different view if it were a totally separate third party who is spamming Bitcoin and taking up the block space in this like financial pricing out attack vector versus one where it was simultaneously one of the people who controlled, and I don't say totally controls, but is disproportionately influential and controlling of very core parts of what is effectively basically like the ability to relay a transaction.
Hypothetically. That's like a real real person you're talking about? It is, right?
Most definitely. We won't name names here, but yeah, I think Bob's point is interesting, and like you've expressed, Charlie, how like what Luxor does when they're doing like a 4 mega, for example. You guys think a lot about how you do that. It's not just like pay us, we'll rip it, even though you use that language like rip a 4 mega, but like there's more thought and like there's a decision that goes into that to make sure like is this actually good for the network. So I can definitely see a world where like, if the Super Bowl has like a $500 million marketing budget and they want to plaster Bitcoin with like, make sure you pay attention to these two people playing the game.
Then that's what Bitcoin is
a freaking 4 mega of that.
I literally pitched this idea to someone last fall. So,
it's gonna happen. See, I think it's gonna happen, and there's gonna be a bunch of news articles about.
We could probably hit a block during this window. Yeah, I literally.
I could see the headlines like Roger Goodell stops Bitcoin, and then they get a ton of press, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, the NFL is even bigger than I thought it was." And
Wall Street Bets shows this
does it
as a thing that sort of can't, like, when you start tickling people's emotional, like the way they get irritated against the man or something. If there's a man in this situation, the man. People are really like emotionally attached to that. So we have a lot of people running nodes and making sure that those stay around for like ever, because now we are invested in it, not just financially, but emotionally. People like pictures, people like teams. These are a lot of teams that we're on that we're not going to give up easily. On top of that, we have shitcoin gambling, and shitcoiners, as you know, will scratch to the surface of any mechanism that they're given. And if anybody wants to fight them, go for it. Drain your funds, get bent, and we'll see you next year when we're back to shitcoining. That's the way it feels like it would go down if it were to go down.
So to answer Bob more specifically, I hope I've been able to communicate. If I haven't, then I want to communicate this more clearly. I think everyone should be able to have more control and should take a more active role in what their mempool policy is on the nodes they run. And I think I've tried to endorse this as I think it's really good. Everyone's like being very clear about, I like these things, I don't like these things. What I don't like is when one person can not one person, but very, very small kind of pipeline, a group of people can push this a thing which is not consensus, even from a raw numbers of like people using Bitcoin these days standpoint, can push this mempool relay policy, which is one of the reasons why I think like it's really important, even more than ever, to run your own node. And I think it's probably more important for more people to get involved in actually figuring out how to configure and help people configure their own nodes for, I like these transactions, I don't like these transactions. Because in such an attack scenario that you give, we could choose not to relay those superfluous air-sucking transactions. They might just go directly to block producers and submit there, and maybe that's the next attack vector. But you can then play the game theory out about that as well. So.
Yeah, it's extra interesting because if anyone prevents you from being able to use Bitcoin the way you want to use Bitcoin because you get priced out, makes you angry. Because you love Bitcoin and you want to use Bitcoin and you have ways to use Bitcoin. And, a lot of people have their business is based on Bitcoin, or their fun is based on Bitcoin, or their entertainment or their investing is all based on Bitcoin. And when someone prices you out, that doesn't make anyone happy. I know all of us included. If I had to pay 1,000 sats per VB for Bitcoin transactions, that would disgruntle me.
Bob, I think you better strap in, because next year you're gonna wish we had 1,000 sats for.
That would be funny.
So yeah, it's just I don't know, putting myself in their shoes. And if they don't like ordinals, they don't like, fungible tokens, I could see this as kind of, getting priced out, meaning it used to be a lot cheaper to transact on Bitcoin. And so now getting priced out doesn't make anyone happy. But it all comes down to the, is there a should ever on Bitcoin? I mean, it's a decentralized, permissionless blockchain that can be used by anyone to, do whatever they want. So. Yeah, interesting. Good questions.
Even if
it's funny, if you look through history,
the longest.
Yeah, if you look through history, the whole story of Bitcoin and really all of like this broader like decentralized consensus world we're building here, the history of Bitcoin is one of just constant argument and disagreement. And I think this is a feature, not a bug, because because this is what really signifies a permissionless blockchain. And the probably the less arguing we have, the less permissionless it is, because we are all in such perfect consensus while this goes through this crazy adoption curve. Like, to me, the more arguing we have without actually forking is like the perfect place to be, to have as few forks as possible, but as much argument as possible. That path for the next 10 to 20 years seems like a good one to me, where we are just almost always at each other's throats. I hope we can keep it like professional and kind, but like this is kind of how this is going to be a feature of this permissionless future we're building. Because if you don't have someone else's PFP on your full node or someone else's transaction on your full node, then I would say that's a failure of the network.
Yeah, if Vitalik did a really interesting blog post about decentralization a couple months ago, where he talked about convex solutions and concave solutions. I think there are some, like early startup where you just need a yes or no, go fast, pick the right direction, and that's the best for the startup. But in some organizations like government or healthcare, you want, the more voices you have, the more discussion, you actually end up with a compromise, which is the best solution for everyone rather than a black or white. And so he talked about that in the context of, like solving, like what kinds of problems are good for decentralization. And I think because there's so much compromise and discussion and argument going on the Bitcoin side, it just shows how decentralized it is, because not a single entity has the power or the control or even the mind share to be able to just push their agenda forward. And so, it's a testament to the massive decentralization that Bitcoin has, I think.
Yep. Okay.
Something was going to do.
Pivot again, another topic.
Donnie, you back?
Yeah, but I don't know. I gotta find a place to. How do you guys thought, like? Am I the only one who's always doing this? I am, right? But it's never on Twitter. It's only the video thing. I got to figure this out. What I was going to say there, before I probably froze, even though I don't know if I did, was that something was going to do whatever's happening right now. Something was going to be the catalyst for it. I've been thinking a lot about how markets move over the course of time, and we think that it's difficult to figure out whether the crashes, like the beginning of a crash, triggers what happened with FTX, and then that went nuts, or if FTX triggered the. You know what I mean? Like, what's the cause and what's the effect, and how do these things work together? One way or the other, something was going to happen now, or somewhere around now, in this cycle where too much traffic occurred from one side or the other, and some other side got mad about it. And only by doing this does Bitcoin even get to expand and create sidechains, L2s, drive, like all this innovation that's occurring right now only occurs because all of this strife occurred, and the strife was bound to occur somehow. So I don't think there's a demon. I don't think there's a protagonist. I think that it's just people doing people shit, and somebody was going to people this real hard, and we did.
You could argue the strife was a key ingredient that pushed it even further forward, which is just beautiful and ironic.
Well said. Okay, let's do like a 10-minute rapid-ish fire round, because I got a few topics I want to get you guys' perspective on. First is runes. I was in the Discord, I think yesterday, and he dropped some alpha on rune release date targeted for the halvening block height, and release schedule of the tickers going to be starting at 13 symbols and ascend down over 4 years, I believe. So both those are interesting. They're going to make the degens. Actually, I'm not sure the degens are going to respond. They'll probably be totally fine with that. But yeah, what's your guys' thoughts on runes currently?
So the release date for Casey's Runestone config of runes is going to be the first block of the halving. That is pretty much going to happen. We're going to assume it's going to happen. The actual issuance, as far as like namespace, like starting with 13 characters and going down, I don't know how, I don't know if he's come up with a schedule for this. This is interesting because this is way more just Casey's entirely Casey's project, whereas Ord, the development of Ord, is Casey and Raph, and then some other people, and there's more people talking about how it should and shouldn't look. So I don't think the actual kind of schedule for how to release the names over time has fully awesome. I don't think he's come to a decision on that yet, but that's because he was pontificating is it over does it go by difficulty adjustment? Does it go by epoch? Whatever. So interesting to watch it happen in real time.
I think there's going to be meta around ticker choice because no one wants a 13-character ticker. It's just insane. So it's probably just going to be underscore, 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 underscore 40 or something like that. I'm imagining the metas we're going to see on tickers, XXXXXXXXXXX Bob. There's going to be do you throw the repeating character at the beginning, or do you throw it at the end, or do you split it and put the ticker in the middle? Or they're people are going to find ways to simplify the characters, and then something is going to catch on. So you basically have 3-character, 4-character tokens again, just using some repeating character. That's what I imagine people will do, because otherwise it's just way too hard. You can't hashtag a 13-character ticker unless it's really easy to remember. So yeah, I don't know.
The meta is going to be sentences or full not periods. It's going to be I am. That's the new.
I am Iron Man.
Casey Rodamore is 13 characters. Conspiracy. Or I was thinking that's a really good point, Bob. I also wonder if you could do one of those emoticons of that, the dude flipping the table or whatever. I don't know, just stuff like that. But you've got a good point. Characters need to be short. Tickers they want to be short.
You have to be able to remember it and see it once and never forget it, because otherwise you just get lost. Like, what was that ticker again? And then you find a bunch that are kind of similar. And so unless they're unique, they're not gonna,
The meme war.
Do we also know how efficient is this?
Meme,
like
the meme war.
Because I think one thing that's interesting I saw is that Bitmap makes it through NOT's data carrier size. It's like 42 bytes or less is what gets relayed. And bitmap is just a block number dot bitmap. There's no other like ampersands or anything. So bitmap, uncensorable. We know that now for a fact. Are runes in the same basket with how efficient they are? Do we know any of this?
So I think simple runes transactions will fit in. I mean, I think it's just in the op return. And if you have 40 bytes, like that's enough for a runes transaction. I believe, because it's a fairly compact standard. I don't know exactly what the simplest form of a runes deploy or mint is, but I think a deploy and a mint would fit within the whatever it is, 42 bytes op return. I'm just guessing. I don't actually know the numbers there. I know you can do more complex things where you airdrop or send to multiple addresses, and those are likely going to push. I mean, they're probably going to push over the 80 bytes standardness rule for the op return. But I think a lot of the runes transactions, it's Casey lamented on Twitter the other day that the ordinals envelope could have been, this was a couple of weeks ago, could have been more efficient. There was an extra series of bytes that are included in the ord envelope that didn't have to be, and he was like, no, the world was ending. So very, very conscious of efficiency. So I think runes is going to be as efficient as possible. Yeah.
I don't know if I really have a take on this other than, is this going to affect transaction fees and network congestion in a positive way? I would assume the answer is yes to that. And are people going to find ways to slap images or recursive whatever's in here? And is this just going to be, is it going to replace ordinals henceforth in a way? Because it's not UTXO driven, right? It doesn't contribute to bloat. So there's, specifically the shit coins, correct? You don't have to inscribe transfer, inscribe sale, right?
It works within the UTXO model of UTXOs being created and destroyed alongside normal Bitcoin transactions.
Yeah,
so and which makes sense. You still have issues with it being kind of a ordering namespace protocol, but it's way less incoherent.
It cuts some corners in a good way.
Yeah,
I really don't know enough about runes other than, sorry.
Yeah, really quickly, runes is probably going to be the most efficient of the standards because Casey values efficiency and because he designed it from the ground up after we'd seen all the craziness around BRC20 and ORC20 and ORC Cash and, all the other dozens and dozens of fungible token standards. And so I'm expecting it to be very byte efficient and very nice and friendly for Bitcoin, which I think, the ordinals protocol also is very much that way, I think, as well, because it was designed by Casey. And so I'm anticipating lots of adoption. One, just because it's Casey. I mean, he's the supreme ruler, overlord,
the nerd king
of Bitcoin.
Most influential person in crypto.
Yes, exactly. And so take that, and on his influence alone, I think we're going to get traction. There's also something around a leader like that taking a stand on a standard that can really get people to standardize. Plus, if you can argue that it reduces the UTXO bloat as opposed to BRC20 and it's more efficient, and he's actually doing a lot of the legwork to make this a really crazy, awesome fungible token standard. If you've been in the GitHub or you've looked at his ideas on Twitter, he's really trying to get in the degen mindset to understand how to build this token standard. And so I think he's putting a lot of good work into the standard, and I think that's going to show in, the the places it can be used and how you can integrate it other places. So I expect it will get wild success and adoption.
Yep, agree. Okay, I want to jump to maybe the last topic. Although one thing on Casey I want to call out is he is like god tier at naming things, because I was watching his like slides at one of the conferences where he announced runes, and one that I haven't heard before is it's electric for being able to lift into the Lightning Network. And I asked some Lightning devs, like, is that a term you guys use? Like, that's spicy. Like, that just hits. And he's like, no, I'm stealing that for sure. So that might be a Rotable rarity for another name. Being able to lift the UTXO into Arc or to Lightning Network. It's electric. So props to him. Because yesterday I was watching and he was talking about like alpha sats, and he was like, alpha sats is a terrible name. Like,
yeah.
Suck at naming. And Charlie was like, or maybe you're just super effing good at naming things, and you shouldn't judge everyone else because you have the gift. Yep.
Yeah, just one quick thing on naming, that he is exceptionally good, and names are extremely important. And, there's something to be said about his innate ability to name things and the success of Ordinals, because he names things in ways that it's not cliche, it's not cheesy, it's descriptive, it's interesting, it has a cool factor. And the fact that he can consistently repeat this process, like, I don't know, he's got the magic touch or something.
Yep, totally. Okay, last topic I want to touch on, like, next 5-10 minutes. We're going into 2024. Bunch of talk about soft forking. Udi's going to take the chain. Maybe he's going to fork off and do his own thing. CTV is a big topic. Deleting op return, I've seen that thrown in some of the comments. Like, what do you guys? I don't know anything about this. Like, my job is to invest in startups, and I wait till they're activated to start considering them. So I'd spend no time doing any of this. What's your guys' pulse on like the likelihood of an upgrade and what's possible next year?
I think the likelihood of that of Bitcoin's mempool policy, Bitcoin Core's mempool policy getting tighter, I'd have no idea. I would say the net tightness of mempool policies across Bitcoin will get more permissive next year. So that's a pretty strong bet. This is if Core decides to release such a version, I think that is very bad for Core use and adoption and proliferation to the network. I know that other Core developers have broadly condemned and dismissed this idea, but you never know until we see it.
Yeah, and from the like Udi is going to upgrade Bitcoin idea, if you can present a case, which they likely will, of layer 2 on Bitcoin, I'm based on my calculations probably a 20x reduction in cost for users, and likely a 20x increase in throughput. And all of that probably means you can, move the numbers a little bit and get more transaction fees for miners. And so if you can build an L2, like I'm assuming a lot of people are building sovereign rollups and they want trustless bridging, and they don't have trustless bridging right now. So I'm assuming they're going to vote for something that will give them trustless bridging to have a true L2 on Bitcoin. Maybe that's some form of CTV. I think there are talks of BitVM plus CTV plus, some combo there where you could have at least trust minimized bridging. If not, like a ZK verifier of sorts. I don't know exactly what they're going to be pushing for, but if you can make the case to miners that you will make more money if we do this, and you paint this picture of nice L2s, trustless bridging, tons of transactions, lots of users, I don't know, that paints L2s already have a lot of traction on Ethereum. There's a lot of development in the space. It's a really interesting way to scale Bitcoin. And I could see something like that. I mean, I have no idea how long it would take to get something like that in Bitcoin with an upgrade. But I could see them fighting for that next year.
Yeah, this topic is
wild.
This topic is so weird because like I'm trying to do my duty of like whatever signaling for consensus means. So I'm like listening to Twitter Spaces and I'm like, okay, CTV check sig from stack, send it. Like, that's what I want to do. And I'm like, do I put that in my Twitter bio, even though I have no idea what the F any of that really means? Is that what I'm supposed to do? Or do I just sit and wait on my hands and let people decide for me? Like, but for people who aren't technical, it's like, what the heck do we do besides like on Twitter and sometimes try and like pontificate, even though clearly none of us know what the heck we're talking about?
I would say wait a few months, because there's a lot of people having this exact same type of conversation right now, because it feels we have such short memories. 6 months ago, none of these were anything but a side conversation. 2 months ago, only the smart people were talking about it as a actual potential thing. And now you have, I would say, moderately technical people out in the wild adding any of these opcodes or soft fork requiring things to Bitcoin. So wait 2 or 3 more months, and I think this conversation will have matured a lot. I look forwards to being able to put something in my Twitter bio, or maybe an op return in a block, and I look forwards to another era of doing something cool on Bitcoin.
Yep. Yeah. Twitscription. We're going to Twitscription to validate.
Hey, if it means we get to add one opcode, then I'm down.
Bob said, hell no.
Bitcoin governance is going to deteriorate to Twitscriptions. I think it's going to be programmed in. You're going to have an indexer, and whether Bitcoin upgrades or not is going to be dependent on Twitscriptions. That's just the way it's got to be.
We don't control Bitcoin. It's out of our heads. All right, we covered an hour of a good conversation. Donnie, I'm going to let you take us home. Do you have any last thoughts, any existential questions, or anything you want to close us out on?
Man, I'm probably not going to stick the landing on this one because I don't really know enough about the history and future of Bitcoin. Well, certainly not the future, but definitely not the history of Bitcoin, because I'm probably the newest to like really obsessing over it in this room. But what I would say is that if governance depends on humans interact via social media almost primarily at this point, and everything is and always has been a meme. So we can kind of say that what Bob is, or whatever, who just said that Twitscriptions are going to run Bitcoin governance, they already kind of do. So there's my take it home thing. It's inescapable. It's where we live, and we are the people who do this. So yeah, you're right.
Oh no, what have we done? What have we done?
That was a soft landing that would make the Federal Reserve very proud. So great job.
That's what I was going for.
I think that's our episode.